What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So on the Politics Live show, the panel was discussing the risks of a no-deal Brexit and the level of planning that has gone into it in the lead up to Brexit. Now, of course, this is the BBC panel, so they claim it's a 3-for-2 Remain in their eyes, which is slightly better than the normal ratio the biased Broadcasting Corporation employs on its panels, but from my view, it looked like it was 4 Remainers and 1 Brexiteer. By that I mean the only real Brexiteer is the Labour MP Kate Hoey, who has just announced she will actually stand down at the next election. The other Brexiteer is the type who claims to want Brexit, but throws out Project Fear nonsense about no deal, so he may only be a half Brexiteer, like a soft Brexiteer. Of course, the no-deal Brexit derangement syndrome is strong among the panel, as we have all come to expect from the BBC now. Let's check it out.
Right, well, let's talk about no deal and no deal planning and listen to the former Permanent Secretary at the Department for Exiting the European Union, Philip Rycroft. This is from Panorama.
No deal is a step into the unknown, and it is a venture that is fraught with risk. There's no doubt about that.
Is Britain ready for no deal?
The planning, I think, is in good shape, absolutely. But of course, what that doesn't mean is that there won't be an impact from Brexit, and particularly a no deal Brexit, because that is a very major change.
Margot, do you agree the assessment of the risks of no deal, he says, are fraught with risk?
Oh yes, certainly, without a doubt. Risk in terms of trade, particularly the economy, the strength of the pound, and even security, because of course if we bounce out without a deal, we get no transition arrangement, and therefore all cooperation really comes to a halt, unless save for whatever we can negotiate via goodwill. Now that doesn't mean to say that you can't do some effective no deal planning, and a lot has been done already. And there is more to be done, and both the candidates for Prime Minister have committed to taking more steps to secure greater no-deal planning. But there is a limit to how much one can plan for such an unknown risk.
Kate?
Well, everyone says that they want a deal, but looks like we're not going to get a deal unless the European Union changes its attitudes and its views. And there's no point doing planning for no deal if we're not prepared in the end to actually have a no deal. And of course, it's not a no deal as such, because there are lots of little side deals already going on that are already being signed up. France has signed a whole number of things with us. A lot of the trade deals we're going to carry on with those anyway. There will be a period where obviously things will be slightly different, but at the end of it, that period, we will be able to then have that independence to go and actually make our own arrangements and to get that trade deal with the European Union. The European Union is not going to give us anything until they know that we are actually serious, that we will leave, and it will hit them far harder than it will hit us.
This Tory shitweasel sits there talking about no deal affecting the pound. But what the hell does she think all this nonsense is doing, delaying Brexit, in the hope of getting some piss-poor deal with the European Union? Every time MPs and the media throw this Project Fear nonsense out there, it lowers our negotiating position, which then affects confidence in the UK and affects the pound. You fucking idiots. It's Remainers who are hurting the UK with their Project Fear, not a no-deal Brexit. This dozy spunk trumpet even admits that plans are in place, so it's not even a no-deal Brexit, is it? As if there's already plans in place for leaving the EU, it can't be no deal. She does not care about no deal, she just wants to remain, but is forced to act like she wants to leave because her constituents probably voted to leave. The Brexiteer rightly elaborates on the deals the Tory MP alluded to and stated that the basic fact no deal preps are useless if the leaders don't have the bollocks to go through with it. I guess time will tell if Boris Johnson or
Jeremy Cunt. I'm so sorry, Jeremy Hunt. I've never said that before in my life. It's usually men who say that, so I really, really want to apologise. I'm sorry.
Has the bottle to go through with it when one of them gets in number 10, before stating what I have said all along. A no-deal Brexit will hurt the EU more than it hurts us. The EU needs us a lot more than we ever needed them. Why do you think the Europhile media and the EU itself is shitting the bed over Brexit, pulling out all the stops they can to keep us in the EU and keep us feeding them with billions of pounds each year?
Well, I mean, I would take issue with a lot of what you've said, Kate, but particularly that if we leave without a deal, that we will be then in a position to negotiate a trade deal, because I think the EU have made absolutely clear to us that they're not going to start negotiating a trade deal until we've left. If we are in a position without a transition agreement, then goodness knows when we'll start those negotiations, and they won't start those negotiations until we've basically passed the withdrawal agreement and the three main tenets in it. You know, the money, citizens' rights and securing the Northern Ireland border. Well, if we go without a deal, they won't start any discussions on any trade deal until
we'll be giving them the 39 billion. We'll be giving them something, because obviously we probably legally owe them something. We certainly won't be giving them 39 billion, and a lot of that money can be used to, in the short term, to actually work for those people who are being perhaps affected in a short term, but long term.
What you mean subsidies?
Long term, it's not
to
going
all the
to
people who are being hit by the tariffs.
There won't be that many people hit. I mean, there is a lot of, you must admit, there's a lot of exaggeration going on.
I do try not to be party to any exaggeration, but certainly the manufacturers and the farmers particularly will be hit badly.
Well, let's have a look at this, because Boris Johnson insisting in the Sunday Telegraph he is not bluffing about delivering a no-deal Brexit on October the 31st. He is urging European leaders to look deep into our eyes and understand that the UK will leave the EU with or without an agreement on Halloween if he becomes Prime Minister. Would you serve in a Boris Johnson government if no deal comes into play?
No, I wouldn't, no. I mean, no, because I can't, in the first place, I cannot commit to what he has been asking future ministers to commit to, which is that we leave on October the 31st with or without a deal, do or die. I can't make that commitment, so I won't be able to serve.
So in that clip, we hear the Tory MP talking about the EU not doing a deal with us because we won't pass the withdrawal agreement. Well, let me tell you something, you stupid bint. The EU will need to do a deal with us once we have left, regardless of the withdrawal agreement, because they need the trade we bring. The money-grabbing fucks in the EU won't just accept no trade, will they? They will cave in, make a trade deal on even terms, as we will already be out. They will have no hold over us. Making a deal before we leave is dumb anyway. It's a weakened position compared to being an independent state and going for a deal. The Tory MP is determined to pay the EU the £39 billion for some reason, though, claiming we need to do that before we get a deal. Well, I say, stick that straight up your arse, love. You can pay the £39 billion out of your own pocket if you want. We should not be giving the EU anything past payments due for this year, as
News at home, we're going, we're off.
We are not funding the EU for the next 10 years, as per the May agreement. They can fund their own superstate. Kate rightly points out that without a deal, we ain't paying £39 billion to anyone. Even with a deal, we still ain't paying £39 billion to them. It's obscene. That can be used to help people in the UK, which is right. Now, I don't often find myself agreeing with many politicians, let alone Labour ones, but this one seems to have her head on straight. She even calls out the blatant fabrications the Remoaners are using with Project Fear in a desperate bid to ignore the Democratic vote to leave. Now, as for Boris bluffing about leaving with no deal on 31st of October, you'll all know that I remain sceptical he will actually do it, but I sure hope he does. Let's continue anyway.
Right, but you did serve in a Theresa May government. You are serving in a Theresa May government that did also say that no deal would be an eventuality.
Well, no deal is the legal default. I also served in her government, voting 3 times for the withdrawal agreement. So we were trying to get a deal at that point, and looked like getting one, and got one, but couldn't get it through Parliament.
Right. What about urging European leaders to look deep into our eyes? Is that a viable strategy?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to change their minds if they look deep into the eyes of Mr. Johnson or anybody else. I'm baffled. I'm a long-term secessionist. I've been in favour of leaving the European Union since the Ice Age, but I don't find this almost hysterical demand for no deal sympathetic or believable. Very interesting piece by Claire Foges in the Times today, in which she lists a number of now born-again leavers who said in the past they'd be perfectly happy to stay, for instance, in the single market, which is my position. I think a Norway deal would be by far the best way out of the European Union for us. It's now been flung on the ash heap by people who are determined, it seems to me, to have the confrontation. And nobody ever mentions the thing which my friend Christopher Booker, who alas died last week, constantly stressed, the terrible effect of non-tariff barriers if you have a no-deal exit. It's not just tariffs. No. It's the enormous bureaucratic mass of stuff which you then completely outside once you leave the single market. So, and it's wholly unpredictable how it will affect people. So I'm baffled by this attachment. As I say, as someone who's a really keen secessionist, I really can't see why so many people who, in many years when I was a secessionist, were completely silent about the whole European issue, said nothing about it, are suddenly so passionate about it.
I certainly wasn't, of course, because I voted against Maastricht and right for the last 30 years.
But how do you stop it? How do you stop it, Margot? How do you stop no deal? I know there is an attempt today to attach an amendment amendment to the Northern Irish Bill, or Northern Ireland Bill. But that's not a guarantee. It may prevent someone like Boris Johnson proroguing Parliament, shutting it down, so that MPs like you couldn't stop it. So what are the options?
Well, I mean, I think you're going to have you know, someone who's much cleverer on parliamentary procedure than I am.
So you don't know,
Oliver Letwin, to come on your show to explain.
Well, he wasn't very successful last 2 weeks ago.
I mean,
when
we did manage. I mean, he did manage at least to get the Prime Minister to delay Article 50 so that a deal could be negotiated or got through Parliament. So, you know, I wouldn't say write him off. I'm not privy to the sort of intricate discussions about what might happen and when. I just know that there is really a majority against leaving without a deal for all the reasons that Peter mentioned.
Isn't there something sulphurously, terrifyingly Cromwellian about discussions of bypassing Parliament in a country which has parliamentary government? I think surely this cannot conceivably be a route which anybody can take without driving us even deeper into a constitutional crisis, which has done enough damage.
But Parliament has already voted to leave with or without a deal when they invoked Article 50. Parliament has already said we want to leave, we are going to leave. What is the problem is that a lot of MPs don't want to leave and have never wanted to leave and are going to do everything they can, Peter, to stop it by using these kind of procedural things by clever people like Dominic Grieve and Oliver Letwin, and actually, in the end, going against the will of the British people, which was to leave. And it wasn't on the ballot paper, leave with a deal or leave with no deal. It was leave.
So we then move on to the Tory MP traitors who want to stop no deal from being considered. Essentially, they want to handicap the UK in its bid to leave the EU and make a deal that would benefit both us and the EU. They want the Theresa May surrender document to be how we leave the EU, meaning we become the vassal state of Europe and pay them for the privilege of it. The host talks about stopping Boris Johnson proroguing Parliament, which we already know from my earlier video they cannot do, as the request would go directly to the Queen. It has fuck all to do with the Tory party traitors or Labour or anyone else. That is why the Tory MPs can't state anything they plan to do to stop Boris, as they very likely can't do anything about it. She's just too much of a lying fuckpig to admit it though. Kate rightly points out that the vote to leave is done. When the government invoked Article 50, they chose to leave with or without a deal, and that the MPs don't want to leave, so they are stopping us from leaving like the true traitors that they all are. We already knew this. Perhaps Kate knows about the Tilbrook case then after all. We see yet again though that these Remoaners are hung up on the fact that no deal wasn't on the ballot. But they always ignore that leaving with a deal wasn't on the ballot paper either. Leave means leave. Deal or no deal, it has to be done. End of fucking story.
Right, Margaret, but Margaret, to prevent no deal happening, what would you personally do? Because there have been colleagues of yours who are prepared to go further. I mean, would you consider voting against the government in a no-confidence motion?
I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to answer hypothetical questions at the moment about what I might or might not do.
But it's a case of going, how far would you go?
Well, I'm very clear that I believe no deal is a huge risk for this country, and the consequences would not just be short-term chaos and disruption, but also long-term decline in investment in Britain.
So what is first, the Conservative Party or the country for you?
Well, I mean, I think every politician has to wrestle with that at times, and I think most of us, have to consider our constituents. My constituency voted 70% to leave, something I've always borne in mind. The country and our party. I mean, all these things, sometimes they're in conflict, and it's very difficult. I just want to take issue with this democratic mandate that Kate mentioned. Yes, I mean, the details of how we left were not on the ballot paper. But, I mean, if you go back to the referendum, people were sold a position that we could leave and still have a good relationship, still have our trading interests secure, and all of that. Well, I would argue, Kate, that we can't unless we get a decent deal and a transitional arrangement.
But we will get a deal eventually. It's just that the way it's being pushed by the European Union. Well, because the European Union, and remember, there's going to be new commissioners, new everything, starting a new parliament with a very strong anti-European, sceptical European Union members in it. Things can change, and things will change, but they'll not change while you have a Prime Minister who has never really fought to leave.
Well, and on that, let's just show you the time.
That is just so not true. Theresa May has put everything.
She would never have signed
into
up to the backstop
deal.
if she'd really thought that she was going to get a deal
is
through
there,
Parliament.
as you know, because otherwise there's an open border into the single market, and the European Union will never. They will never wear that.
Who's going to put the hard border up?
We have an agreement.
We've said we won't. The Irish government have said they won't. The European Union have said they won't. So who's going to build it?
So the host asked about a no confidence vote, which I've said multiple times that the Tory MPs are not that stupid as to destroy their own party just to prevent Brexit. She goes around the houses to evade answering the question though, and changes the subject back onto the referendum wording and getting a deal again. Standard procedure by these fucking MPs, isn't it? Now, as we know, we can do that after we've left. We don't need to have a deal beforehand. It's just ridiculous. I'm sick of saying it. This Tory MP, though, she actually thinks that Theresa May ever actually once tried to get us out of the EU. It's clear to anyone with half a brain cell that Theresa, the EU appeaser, has done her best to hold up Brexit and keep us in the EU. She was a Remainer and always will be.
Here we go again.
Right, well, and on that, before we go again, let's just show the Times. Boris Johnson faces Tory plot to prevent no-deal Brexit. Are you part of that group of 30 Remain MPs seeking to block Britain crashing out of EU, part of the Gawkwood squad after David
I'm not part of any plot. I'm not part of any plot. I do share... I mean, my views on no-deal are very well known, and I worked with, ministers like David Gauke and Amber Rudd, Greg Clark, to make sure we didn't leave without a deal in March.
On the other hand, we have to say that no one who was in any decent plot would ever own up to being there.
But, it doesn't mean, of course, if you were to back a no-confidence motion, some of your colleagues have said they wouldn't usher in a Jeremy Corbyn government, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be a Jeremy Corbyn government. There could be a case made for a government of national unity coming forward. Would you then be...
Well, you keep pressing me on hypothetical potential
It's not that
outcomes.
hypothetical, is it? Because it's coming round the road very shortly.
What is interesting in what you asked me was the assumption that there's going to be a Corbyn government, that either this government survives or there's going to be a Corbyn government. I don't think it is quite as simple as that. We have to look at what's been happening in the Labour Party over the last year, particularly, in recent days with this forthcoming Panorama programme on Wednesday. And Jeremy Corbyn's leadership is by no means secure. And if a Conservative government, no matter who becomes Prime Minister, is up against, a Labour Party who isn't led by Corbyn, and, goodness knows what might happen.
And on that, because Labour MPs are being forced pretty well to reapply for their jobs, are you reapplying to be an MP?
I will be announcing this afternoon what I'm doing. I'm not going to announce it on this programme.
Oh, well, why not? It's only this afternoon.
Because I am going to announce it to my constituents.
Right. A change from what you're currently doing?
You never know.
Right, well, let's talk about something else. Neatly brings us...
I think that this debate has really proved that the parliamentary maths is not there. The maths within your own parties isn't even there in terms of how we deliver Brexit. And it's so important that time and time again we talk about bringing this back to the people, because it's clear that this debate needs to be continued to happen. The fact that the role of Northern Ireland wasn't truly discussed in the last referendum, and there needs to be a clear opportunity that we talk about the realities of what that looks like.
If we get another Leave vote...
the only way of doing that is to bring it back to the people.
What happens
with the
then?
people's vote?
If we get another Leave vote, we will be back where we are. Just delay for business, more uncertainty.
All right.
Well, in that clip, you see the host tries to promote the idea of a government of national unity, which sounds like something the fucking Lib Dums would say. One party wants to leave, the other wants to remain. The left-wing parties of the UK are flat-out communists who don't agree with sharing power, so that idea is ridiculous from the start. The Tories don't just need to be worried about a Corbyn government, they also might be scared of Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party a lot more than Labour right now. Finally, we hear from the Remoaning spunk trumpet, whose only input during this whole segment is to say that she wants a second referendum. Kate rightly shuts her down, saying, when we get another Leave vote, we will still be in the same position, and the Remoaning fuckpigs have no answer for that, because they know if they lose a second vote, they will still demand another vote until the vote goes in their favour. We all know this. It seems that the only true Brexiteer was the Labour MP, and she called out these Remoaning tosspots every time they attempted to spout their Project Fear bullshit. Even the guy who claims to be a Brexiteer is a soft Brexiteer at best. He sounded more like a secret Remoaner today than a Brexiteer in my opinion. So I'm going to end the video there, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Remember to leave a like, share the video and subscribe with the notification bell, and I'll see you all in the next video.